Good evening, everyone. When I was a small kid, the first time I saw a falling star in a clear, dark sky, I was very excited, and I asked my father what it was. My parents told me it's a falling star. And if you make a wish on a falling star, it seems that your wish can come true. I'm sure that all of you must have heard of that before. I wonder whether you have made any wishes before when you spot a falling star. But I think there's a trick in there, because the falling star falls so fast that before you can think of the wish, it's gone. So that's why they say, if you can make the wish on time, it can come true. So I'm sure that all of you have made wishes before. And I'm particularly aware that many people make wishes when they give dana to monks. It's not uncommon for me to see people coming forward with a set of robes, or even dropping some food into my bowl, and they would hesitate a while, close their eyes, and mumble something. And you can be sure that they're making a wish. Some sort of mundane wish, I suppose. Recently I heard that also when it's near exam time, there's a Buddha image, I think, within a glass frame under the Bodhi tree, and it gets filled with people dropping in wishes. They write on little notes and then they just put it in as though it's a letterbox. And then the poor Buddha image will be submerged in paper until the neck. So it's very normal for people to make wishes. But are your wishes worthy enough? Are they pretty mundane wishes? Are they noble wishes? In this sutta called Pathakama Sutta, which can be found in Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Force, Sutta number 61, the Buddha talked about wishes. These wishes are very universal and very basic, but they are something which everyone wishes for. It's like a common denominator that unites all human beings of whatever class or race or creed that you belong to. Let me read to you a translation by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Now this sutta was actually addressed to Anathapindika. I'm sure you've all heard of Anathapindika. He's a very famous disciple of the Buddha, and in fact he's supposed to be the foremost lay supporter of the Buddha. So one day Anathapindika approached the Blessed One when he was staying in, I think it must be Savatthi, in his Jetavana, the monastery that he donated to the Sangha. Then the Buddha addressed him, saying, "Householder, there are 4 things that are wished for, loved and agreeable, yet rarely gained in the world. One thing's, what may wealth come to me righteously. This is the first thing in the world that is wished for, loved and agreeable, and yet rarely gained in the world." Okay, everybody is very busy making money. We cannot deny the fact that money is very important to survive on this earth. But as lay Buddhists, you are supposed to be observing the 5 precepts. And of course you've heard of right livelihood. When you try to earn a living, to make money, you try to do so in a righteous way. Money can be made in many ways. Sometimes you cheat people. Sometimes you do things which are illegal. There are many millionaires in Buddhist countries who deal in drug trafficking or who deal in prostitution, and they make a lot of money. But they are Buddhists and they know that it's wrong livelihood, and they try to compensate for their immorality by doing things like making donations to the temple, sponsoring katina, building temples, and so forth. We shall talk about the consequences of such an action later on. So this thing that is common among everyone, of whatever class, creed, or race that you belong to, is that you want to wish for wealth that is righteously gained. Then the second thing is, having gained wealth in a righteous way, one will think, may I be popular with my relatives and friends. Now, this is the second thing that is wished for, loved and agreeable, yet rarely gained in the world. You may be a very good worker, you may earn a lot of money, but you may not necessarily be popular. People may hate you for your success. People may be jealous of you. You may not have a very good personality, but somehow you're rich. You make money and you get it in a righteous way. Some people are just born winners, whereas some are born losers. Two people may have the same intelligence and may have the same state of health, and yet one is rich and the other one is poor. Of course, as Buddhists, we all would say that that's because of a past karma. So being popular means actually having a lot of supporters, having a lot of friends, your relatives, they rally to your help whenever you need them. So this is another wish that is very common. The third wish is, after having gained wealth and popularity, one thinks, may I live long and attain longevity. Of course, your basic needs have to be satisfied first. You got enough money, and now you're popular with your friends, got a good social circle. And now the next thing you want is to prolong your happiness, to prolong your prosperity and success. You want to have long life so that you can enjoy for a longer time. I think something very basic. Everyone here would agree that these three wishes are what everybody wants. The fourth wish is, having gained wealth, popularity, and longevity, then you want to continue your happiness in the next world. You think, with the breakup of the body after my death, may I be reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. No, that's the nature of attachment. When you get something good, you want to prolong your happiness, prolong your enjoyment in that good things that you have acquired. So these four wishes are very basic, and they are wishes that are loved and agreeable, yet they are rarely gained in the world. Because not everybody knows the right way to attain or fulfill these four wishes. Then the Buddha continued, these are the four things that are wished for, loved and agreeable. There are, householder, four other things that lead to the obtaining of those four things. So this is the Book of Fours. Anguttara Nikaya is also translated as numerical sayings. This is the Book of Fours, so he talks of things in terms of four. So now the Buddha talked about four worthy wishes, and now he's talking about four ways that you can follow in order to fulfill your wishes. And what are these four ways? It's quite simple actually. I think all of you must have heard it many times. One is to have accomplishment of faith. The second is to have accomplishment of morality. Third is to have accomplishment of generosity. And the fourth is to have accomplishment of wisdom. Now, the Buddha said that these four things can help you to fulfill those four wishes. Doesn't mean that either one of them. It must be a combination of all. If you have faith in the Buddha, that the Buddha is perfectly self-enlightened one, that he is the worthy one, he is perfectly purified of all defilements, and so on and so forth. But you're not accomplished in morality, you're not accomplished in generosity, nor in wisdom, then still you will not have the means. Some of you might have heard of cases in the scriptures which tell us of people who are not really very devout Buddhists. At the time when they're about to die, they suddenly behold the Buddha, and they have faith in the Buddha, and after they died, they are born in a heavenly world. The story of Mata Kundali is, I think, very common. Mata Kundali was actually the son of a Brahmin. He died after a very severe illness. Before he died, the Brahmin took him out of his house and put his bed at the roadside. At that time, the Buddha passed by, and this boy, just before he died, beheld the Buddha and had full faith in the Buddha. And because he was having faith in the Buddha when he died, he was reborn immediately after that as a Deva. Now, although he's born as a Deva, we don't know how long he's going to stay and enjoy as a Deva, because that will really depend on his karma as well. As you know, the life of a deva is also dependent on the strength of the good karma that they had done before. Well, once you have faith in the Buddha, then you will be able to accept the Buddha's teachings. Now, having faith in the Buddha is one thing, and having faith in his teachings is another. If you read in the suttas, you will find that during the Buddha's time, a person who is a Hindu, a Brahmin, would make a confession of faith in the Buddha and the Dhamma at the end of a discourse. And the discourse might not be very long, and it's only about a certain subject. Now, he doesn't have to know the whole Tipitaka, he doesn't have to know the Abhidhamma, nor does he have to know about all the various books in the Suttantas. He just listened to one discourse, and because of his faith in the Buddha, he says, I take refuge in the Buddha and the Dhamma. Nowadays, there are so many different Buddhist denominations. Even among Theravadins, you have got so many different traditions. Among the Sri Lankans also, you have different Nikayas. Among the Burmese also, you have different sects. Among the Thai also, you have many different denominations. And sometimes they differ in their interpretations and practice of the Dhamma Vinaya. And on top of that, we have also the non-Theravada Buddhist traditions. You have the Tibetans, and among the Tibetans you have the red group and the yellow group and the white group and the black group and so forth. Among the Chinese Buddhists, you have different schools. You have the Zen, you have the Chan, you have the Pure Land school, and Koreans also have their own Zen. So nowadays it's not that easy. You have faith in the Buddha, but it's like going to a shopping center. You want to buy a product and you go to a supermarket and you see so many different brands. Now, which one are you going to choose? It can be very perplexing for a beginning Buddhist. So, what sort of guideline should we use? You see, as a lay Buddhist, one has got more freedom than a monastic. Because a monastic is bound by monastic laws and vows and regulations. And he is required to accept all that is found in his particular tradition. Now, if he's a monk in the Theravada tradition, he would have to follow all the Vinaya rules. He would have to follow all the suttas and the Abhidhamma that are included in the Theravada Tipitaka. He's supposed to accept them as the Buddha word. As a lay Buddhist, even though you can call yourself a Theravadin, or you may have strong inclinations towards Theravada teachings, you're still not bound by any religious law to accept only Theravada teachings. You can also explore other non-Theravada teachings. Perhaps one of the guidelines that we can make use of is, besides the very famous advice given by the Buddha in the Galama Sutta, we can also take recourse to the advice given by the Buddha to Mahapajapati Gautami. She asked the Buddha, Bhante, can you tell me in brief what the Dhamma Vinaya is, so that I can go and practice on my own? And the Buddha told her very briefly that if you listen to a Dhamma, and the Dhamma conduces to dispassion, if it leads to dispassion, leads to the purification of the mind, if it leads to contentment, if it leads to being easily supported, then you can be sure that that is the Buddha's teaching. Basically what he's talking about is that if it leads to sila, samadhi, panya, if you have precepts, you keep the precepts, then you try to practice concentration to purify your mind, and you practice insight meditation to be enlightened. And basically, if you study the general principles of all the different Buddhist schools, you can find that they share many common beliefs as well. They believe Gautama Buddha was the founder of Buddhism. They would agree in the Four Noble Truths. They will agree in the Eightfold Noble Path. They will agree with the 37 factors of enlightenment. These are the basic things. So having faith in the Buddha means that you should have enough faith to accept all these teachings, no matter in what cultural form it may come in. Now, having faith in the Buddha, having faith in his teachings, then we must actually put them into practice. And the first step here is the practice of morality. Morality means the 5 precepts for lay people, and for monks, of course, it would mean more than that. But as lay people, you can also observe the 8 precepts on Uposatha days, or even 10 precepts if you want to, on special occasions. The third thing that can help one to achieve one's wishes is the practice of generosity. Let me read to you Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of this particular subject. And what is accomplishment in generosity? Here, a noble disciple dwells at home with a mind free from the stain of stinginess, freely generous, open-handed, delighting to relinquishment, one devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. This is called accomplishment in generosity. I think I don't have to talk very much on that because Penang people are famous for their generosity. You can see that here in Mahindarama, we've got so many charitable projects going on. You've got Old Folks Home, you've got a free clinic that's been running for several years. You've got other projects coming up again. And it's so wonderful that all of these projects are staffed by volunteers. And some more are coming up. So I don't really have to deal a lot on dana. Now, what I want to point out here is that in several suttas, the Buddha has explained that dana and sila can lead to the fulfillment of these 4 wishes. If you do a lot of dana, that will create the condition for you to get wealth, right? In Bhojana Sutta, the Buddha says that one who gives dana, one who gives food to monks, for example, he's actually giving 5 things. He's giving longevity, he's giving beauty, because you need food to be beautiful, to nourish your body. He's giving strength, he's giving comfort or happiness, and he's also giving wisdom. So because he gives these 5 things, when he gives food, he will get these 5 things back in return. So these things like wealth and longevity and having the chance to be reborn in heaven is also conditioned by generosity. In a sutta called Janusoni Sutta, the Buddha explained to a Brahmin called Janusoni that a person who does a lot of dana but who does not observe his precepts, like the cases that I talked about earlier, of people who indulged in drug trafficking and then got rich, and they did a lot of dana by building temples and sponsoring katina and so forth. Now, he says people who are not pure in their precepts, but they do a lot of dana, when they die, they may not be reborn as human beings, and they may not be reborn as devas. Because of their immorality, they may be reborn in the animal world. But even though they are reborn in the animal world, they may be reborn as a royal elephant, or a royal stallion, or a dog, which is the pet of a rich man, or a pet cat. All these are different animals that enjoy a lot of luxury. You'll be surprised, that some animals, they enjoy more pleasures and luxuries than human beings. Look at the people in India, in Africa, who are suffering so badly. There's one story that I often tell. When I first arrived in Taiping, I was introduced to one of our supporters, and he said that he is the owner of a factory. And I said, what do you do? He said, well, I make pet toys. Pet toys? What on earth are pet toys? I haven't heard of pet toys before. Toys for pets to play. I said, who is going to buy toys for pets to play in Malaysia? He says, no, this is not for sale in Malaysia. This is 100% export. He makes toys out of coconut shells, out of coconut husks and rubber, latex, and he exports them to US, to UK, to Europe, and he makes a hell of a lot of money. And I said, why is it like that? Then one of his brothers told me that he watched a documentary before. He said that some Westerners, they are millionaires, they are very rich, but when you become very rich, the people that surround you are not really your friends. They are around you because they are opportunists. They want to curry favor from you. They want to get a good job from you. They want to get something out of you. And their relationship is very superficial. As a rich man, you can't trust anyone because anyone could be out there to cheat you. So where do they shower their love? they shower their love onto their pets. That's a story of an architect and his wife. But this one is a Malaysian. Seems that this architect is very smart. He says, in case I get bankrupt, so why not I transfer everything into your name? So he transferred everything into his wife's name, and his wife happily agreed. And before he got bankrupt, the wife ran away. Everything was in her name. And now he's really bankrupt. So the Buddha also talked about human beings and animals. And one of his suttas, he said that human beings are crooked, whereas animals are straight. When an animal loves you, he loves you. When he's angry, he will show that he's angry. Have you heard the saying, as faithful as a dog? Dogs are very faithful animals. You can beat them, but they won't bite you back because you are the owner. But if somebody else were to beat them, they will fight back. Okay, so he says that human beings, even though they may be very angry, even though they may hate you a lot, they can still smile at you. But the moment you turn your back, they'll put a dagger behind it. Whereas it says animals are not like that. Animals are very sincere and straightforward. So no wonder these rich people, since they cannot trust human beings, they shower all their loves upon their pets. So this very fortunate pet is not so fortunate after all. He must have done a lot of dana before in the past, but he did not keep his precepts. So don't think that you just do a lot of dana, you can go to heaven, If you don't keep your precepts, you might come back as a pet dog. Or even a raw elephant. Okay? So that's why the Buddha has talked about these 4 things. You have to do all these 4 things together, not just one of them. You have to do dana, but at the same time, you have to keep your precepts as well. In another sutta called Sihasenapati Sutta, the Buddha talked about how a person who does dana can become very popular. Wanting to be popular with your friends and relatives is also another wish, is a second wish, in fact. So if you do a lot of dana, definitely people will like you. If you give a lot of gifts to people, then people will flock around you. So you get the next sort of accomplishment that is needed for you to fulfill these 4 worthy wishes is accomplishment in wisdom. Now this is a bit difficult, but it's an interesting subject. Okay, let me read to you Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And what is accomplishment in wisdom? One who dwells with a heart overcome by covetousness and unrighteous greed does what he should avoid and neglects his duty. As a consequence, his popularity and happiness degenerate. So he talks about 5 qualities of mind. One is covetousness and unrighteous greed. Second is ill will. The third is sloth and torpor. 4th is restlessness and worry. And the 5th one is doubt. If you are beset by any of these 5 things, then you will do what you're not supposed to do and fail to do what you're supposed to do. Now let us go through each one of these. If you're a meditator, you'll probably be aware that these are the 5 What hindrances. Are the 5 hindrances? When you try to practice meditation, these 5 things will prevent you from making progress in your meditation. The first one is a bit different. Here the first one says is covetousness and unrighteous greed. But the first of the 5 hindrances says that it is sense desire for sense objects. So when you're sitting down in meditation, you're trying to focus on your breath, or you're trying to focus on your rising and falling, or you're trying to radiate metta, then your mind runs off. Thinks about the ice cream in the fridge, or thinks about the char kway teow down in McAllister Road, or thinks about all these sense objects, thinks about the VCD that you saw, and it was so beautiful, and you want to see it again. Now, all these objects of the senses that come to you when you are trying to meditate, it becomes the hindrance. Now, the other one is ill will. You are trying to radiate metta, and then you think of someone which you really hate, and then you have a lot of anger and ill will coming out. That's also a hindrance. Then you try to meditate, and then you doze off, fall asleep. That's also another hindrance. That's called sloth and torpor. Or you try to sit down and you just cannot concentrate because your mind is so restless. You keep thinking of this and that, and thinking of the things that you should have done but you didn't do, or the things that you should do but you forgot to do, and things like that. These also will affect your meditation. And then finally, you might have doubt. Doubt about yourself, doubt about your practice, doubt about the method, doubt about your teacher. Say, maybe I don't have enough paramis to meditate. I've been sitting here for half an hour already, still I cannot concentrate my mind. Maybe next life. See, this doubt. Maybe this is not the right method for me, maybe rising, falling, maybe I should do something else like meditation on the breath, or maybe something on metta. These are doubts. So doubts also can be a hindrance to your meditation. So you will see that actually there's a parallel. Meditation is one thing, but here the Buddha is talking to Anatta Pindika. So if you do meditation, especially Satipatthana meditation, you are actually learning how to identify these defilements of the mind, these hindrances when they arise, and you're also learning how to handle them, right? Whatever meditation you do, you still have to handle them. You know how to handle them. So if you do meditation, it really will help you in your worldly affairs as well. Because in your worldly affairs, these 5 things are also hindrances. So let me continue. One who dwells with a heart overcome by covetousness and unrighteous greed, by ill will, by sloth and torpor, by restlessness and worry, and by doubt, does what he should avoid and neglects his duty. As a consequence of this, popularity and happiness degenerate. When a noble disciple thus understands that these qualities are defilements of the mind, he abandons them. When he has abandoned them, he is called a noble disciple of great wisdom, of vast wisdom, one who sees the range of vision, one accomplished in wisdom. This is called accomplishment in wisdom. So being wise means that you have to deal with these hindrances in the course of your life. When you're in work, if you are beset by any of these things, if you're in the office and you are obsessed by hatred or ill will for a member of your staff or for your boss, you're angry at him, you can't work efficiently. If you are filled with drowsiness and sloth and torpor, you will not be able to work efficiently as well. And because of that, that's going to affect your popularity. And now one thing that I want to point out is that there is a difference between what a yogi is supposed to do and what a layperson is supposed to do. Although many of the hindrances are similar, the way that they should be handled is a bit different. Now let us look at the first one. For a layperson who is involved in worldly life, the covetousness and unrighteous greed is the first of the hindrance. Whereas for a yogi, it is sense desire. Now, these are 2 different things, because sense desire is a very broad spectrum. As a yogi, you are not supposed to entertain any desires for pleasures of the senses. If there is a desire that arises in you to listen to some beautiful music, that must be acknowledged immediately, let go of, and you're supposed to come back to your object of meditation. Now, for a layperson who is busily engaged in earning a livelihood, it's different. It's not sense desire. Here it says in Pali, abhijja visama lobha. Now, abhijja is one word, visama lobha is another word. Now, abhijja means covetousness. To covet means to desire very strongly something that belongs to somebody else. Okay? Visama lobha means unrighteous attachment, unrighteous greed. Now, this word can be interpreted in 2 ways. If you know Pali grammar, you can say visama lobha or unrighteous greed means covetousness. So, covetousness and unrighteous greed is the same thing. Or you can interpret it as 2 different things. Covetousness is one thing, and unrighteous greed is another. Well, the commentary says that these are the same thing. That means when he says unrighteous greed, he refers to covetousness. That sort of narrows down to just very strongly desiring animate or inanimate objects belonging to somebody else. Now, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as two different things. Covetousness as one thing, and unrighteous greed as another. So which means that it is broader. Which means that as a layperson, you are allowed to have righteous greed. It's a reverse. If you can't have unrighteous greed, you can have righteous greed. There's nothing wrong with having righteous greed. This is a dilemma that many yogis face. Once a very intense yogi who's gone to several retreats before approached me when I was in KL, or rather she emailed me. She asked me that she's just done a retreat and she's done very well in the retreat and now she's back home. She's just married maybe about a year or two. No children. And she was trying to continue her practice as a yogi back home. And then of course that would bring about a lot of conflicts. She's living with her husband, she's got her worldly responsibilities, and how can you live as a yogi at home? Right? So I had to explain to her that a yogi has got a different set of ideals to follow, and a layperson has a different set. So as a yogi, you're not supposed to entertain sense desires. As a yogi, you observe the 8 precepts. Even if in the course of a meditation, you have a replay in your mind of a video you saw recently, you're not supposed to indulge in it. So as a yogi, you're not supposed to indulge in any sense pleasures, any sense desires for any pleasures of the senses. But as a householder, you can have righteous greed. Righteous greed means any attachment that does not entail breaking the 5 precepts. Okay? You can have greed, you can have attachment to buy a new blouse, you can go window shopping, you want to buy a new set of hi-fi equipment, you want to buy a new VCD, you want to buy a lot of household things. These are all greed, from the Abhidhamma point of view. As long as you're not an arahant, you still have a lot of attachment. Even monks are not freed from this sort of attachment. They want robes of a specific color. They want cotton robes. They don't want tetron robes. They want their bowl cover to be very nicely done. These are all still various forms of attachment. But this is not unrighteous attachment. It's righteous because you're not breaking your precepts. Okay? So here, as a layperson, you must remember that the first hindrance, the first defilement of the mind that can prevent you from success in your life, in your livelihood, is being beset by unrighteous greed. Greed that will make you break the 5 precepts. Once you break the 5 precepts, you're no longer virtuous, and that will also affect your popularity and your reputation. And as a businessman, people will hear about you and they say, oh, that guy cannot be trusted, so you might lose your business. So it's a good thing also for a layperson to learn how to practice Satipatthana meditation, because it will help you to identify these defilements when they arise in you and help you to handle them. How to identify them, let them go instead of repressing them. When you identify them, you understand their true nature. You let them go, you don't indulge in them. So these are the 4 things that lead to obtaining the other 4 things that are wished for, loved, and agreeable, yet rarely gained. This is not the end of the discourse. Now we come to a very interesting part of the discourse where the Buddha talked about the proper use of wealth. Okay, now you have followed these 4 things. You've got faith, you've got accomplishment in faith, in morality, in generosity, and in wisdom. And because you've accomplished these 4 things, you have also fulfilled your 4 wishes of getting wealth that is righteously obtained, of being popular with your relatives and friends, of having a long life, and of getting the chance for a good rebirth, preferably in heaven. Now, with the wealth thus acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of one's arms, earned by the sweat of one's brow, righteous wealth righteously gained, the noble disciple undertakes 4 worthy deeds. What 4? So once you've gained your wealth righteously, then the Buddha talks about first thing how he says is spend your wealth. Charity begins at home. Of course, he didn't say it in that way. There's an old English saying, But that is also in conformity with our Buddha's advice. The Buddha's words were, with the wealth thus gained, he makes himself happy, strong and healthy, and takes care of himself properly and happily. He makes his parents happy and pleased, and properly maintains them in happiness. He makes his wife and children, his slaves, his workers, and servants happy and pleased, and properly maintains them in happiness. He makes his friends and colleagues happy and pleased, and properly maintains them in happiness. This is a case of wealth that has gone to good use, that has been fruitfully applied and used for a worthy cause. If you remember the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha talked very briefly about Buddhist economics. He said that the wealth that is earned by a layperson should be divided into 4 parts. The first half should be used to invest so that he can make more money. 1/4 should be kept for a rainy day, and the remaining quarter can be used to enjoy as well as to do dana. Now that is maybe economics during the Buddha's time, and probably maybe it's for merchants who need to have a cash flow and to recycle the profits that they have made so that they can buy more goods. I suppose as a wage earner, as a salaried worker, things might be a bit different. But anyway, the first thing that one should do with the wealth that one has righteously gained is to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, your immediate family, your employees, your friends, your colleagues. Although the Buddha earlier on talked about the accomplishment of generosity, where he says that one should have a mind free from the stain of stinginess, one must be freely generous, open-handed, delighting in relinquishment, one devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. You have to be realistic. You have to take care of yourself and your family before you can open your hand to help others. This is very natural. So don't go to the extreme of saying that I want to perfect my dana parami and I want to give everything away and give 100% of your salary away. How is the family going to survive? This is also a very important consideration now for Buddhist organizations and societies. Nowadays, it seems that in Malaysia there has been a blooming of the Buddha's teachings. You see, Sunday schools are appearing all over the country, and all of them are fully booked, and we lack actually trained staff. We don't have enough Sunday school teachers, but yet there are so many children who are coming. Parents are sending their children for classes. And yet we rely almost exclusively on volunteer teachers. As you know, to become a teacher in a private school or in a government school, you have to go through a certain course and you have to be fully qualified, right? It's a full-time job. And to teach children is one of the most difficult things to do. And you have to be properly trained. So I think that it is about time that Buddhist organizations, societies and temples should consider the welfare of their volunteer Dhamma workers, so-called volunteer Dhamma workers. Maybe it's the time for change. Instead of volunteer Dhamma workers, you might need to have paid Dhamma workers now. And it is also right livelihood, and they are doing something for the Dhamma. And of course, one should also take care of their personal needs as well as the needs of their family and of their future. Some Dhamma workers, ex-Dhamma workers as well as present Dhamma workers, they complain that their future is not very well taken care of. They are paid very poorly and they have no good chance of advancement in the future. And one can expect such Dhamma workers not to last very long, right? So perhaps we should take this into very serious consideration. One of the most important things is to take care of oneself. Take care of your staff, take care of your employees, your family. And only after that, do dana and charity to the second thing that one does with the wealth that has been righteously gained is he makes provisions against the losses that might arise on account of fire and floods, kings and bandits and unloved heirs. He makes himself secure against them. I'm sure all of you will know what to do. You keep money in the bank or you buy insurance for a rainy day. With the wealth thus gained, the noble disciple makes the 5 kinds of offerings. offerings to relatives, number 1. Offerings to guests, offerings to ancestors or departed ones, offerings to the king, and offerings to the devas. The Pali word here is bali. So pancha balingkata hoti. He is a maker of 5 types of offerings. First one is nyati bali, which is offerings to relatives. The second one is atiti bali, offering to guests. Third is pupa peta bali, offering to departed ones. Now, the word peta here deserves some special explanation, because I think most of us here understand peta to mean hungry ghost, right? But in the early scriptures, in the 4 Nikayas, and in some of the books in the 5th Nikaya, the word peta does not refer to hungry ghosts. It refers to a departed one. Okay? So here, pupa peta bali means offerings to the departed one. The 4th one is raja bali, offerings to the king. And the 5th one is devata bali, offerings to devas. Now, when you say offerings here, we mean material things. Okay? First one, offering to relatives means when the relatives are in need, when they come to visit you, or when they are in trouble, you give them material gifts. I remember last time when I was a young boy, there were some racial riots going around in BM. And one of our relatives, he came with her whole family and he stayed with us for quite some time. When they stayed with us, my parents had to support them, give them free lodging and free food as well. So this is one way of making offerings to your relatives. In fact, this is one of the high blessings that is mentioned in the Mangala Sutta, supporting your relatives. The second is offerings to guests. You know, when guests visit you, you have to show them your hospitality. If it's a guest from abroad, you have to give them free lodging, free food. You have to give them hospitality, your attention. And these are offerings to guests. The third is offerings to departed ones. On Chengbeng Day, you see everybody goes to the grave or to the columbarium to make offerings to the departed ones. Here you can see that the Buddha actually encouraged Anathapindika, who is an Arya, a noble one who's really enlightened, to make offerings to the departed one as well. Offerings does not necessarily mean inviting the Sangha, making dana, and then transfer merits. Because here, in this context, it means physical offerings. So you make physical offerings like food and drink to departed ones. This is a practice that was done even during the Buddha's time. There's one story of a monk. He was a very austere monk. He stayed in a charnel ground. Charnel ground is something like a cemetery, but in those days, they don't bury the dead. You know, if you're a rich man, they cremate the corpse and they leave it there. If you are a poor man, they just dump the corpse in the charnel ground and leave it to animals and birds to devour or to decompose by itself. So this monk was staying in the charnel ground, and he was an austere monk. He refused to accept anything that was offered to him by lay people. He will take ropes from the cloth that is wrapped around corpses. He will take the cloth from there and make his robe. He will just salvage whatever he can from the cemetery to make his own requisites. Even he does not accept food from people. What he would do is he would just go and take all these offerings that people have made to their departed ones. You know, like nowadays, Chengbeng, you go to the cemetery on Chengbeng Day, you can see people offering cakes and food. So he just helps himself to this food. So people were unhappy, they saw that this monk was eating the food that they had offered to their departed ones. So some people spread the rumor that this monk is actually eating human flesh. That's why he looks so good. So when the complaint reached the Buddha's ears, he set down the rule that monks cannot help themselves to food. From that time onwards, whenever a monk wants to put anything into his mouth to drink or eat except water, then this must be offered into his hands. You see? So it's not because we are high and mighty that you have to offer food to us, It's because people complain. We cannot help ourselves, we are helpless. You have to help us. Alright? So this was the custom that was practiced even during the Buddha's time. And in fact, in the Sigalovada Sutta, children have 5 responsibilities. And the last responsibility is that they must continually make offerings to their departed relatives. That is also another form of offerings. Some people have criticized us Chinese. They say doing Qingbing is not in line with Buddhist practice. Why are you going to offer food and drinks to the departed ones? We should invite the monks to dana, and then after that transfer merits, and only they will get. But the Buddha says here in this sutta, he is talking to another Pindika who is already a Sotapan, that a person who has righteously gained his wealth through rightful means should spend his money in this way. And one of the ways is to make offerings to the dead. And then followed by that, you have making offerings to the king. What does that mean? Do you still make offerings to the king? You do. Income tax. Don't forget your income tax. You travel on the highway, you got to pay your toll, you have to pay your quit rent, you got to pay all these taxes. These are all offerings to the king. In the old days, they really take the offerings and give to the king, but nowadays, you don't do it anymore. You pay through your money. The last one is making offerings to devas. Now, that's also something very surprising because people have been saying Buddhists only worship the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. They should not worship devas. They should not make offerings to devas. Recently, we had a consecration ceremony of the 4 great kings in Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary in Taiping. And a few days ago, I received an email from someone who questioned the rationale behind it. Why is it that we have to make a shrine for these 4 great kings? Aren't we supposed to just pray to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha? We're not supposed to pray to devas. But here the Buddha is saying that you should make offerings to the devas as well. How do you make offerings to the devas? You go to any Taoist temples, you will see. You'll put fruits or even water, flowers, incense. You go to Dato Kong also, they do the same thing. Right? Don't talk about out of the Buddhist temple. You come to a Buddhist temple also, you see they do the same thing to the Buddha. Right or not? Can the Buddha eat or not? He cannot eat. So what's the point of making offering to the Buddha food, water, incense, flowers? What for? It's to honor, it's to honor the Buddha, to puja the Buddha. It is your heart that matters. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Digha Nikaya, the Buddha was invited to a new house by 2 Brahmins, Sunita Vasakara. They were ministers and they were actually planning a new village. Then they invited the Buddha and the Sangha to the new house, and after the dana, the Buddha gave Anumodana Katha, rejoice in the dana that they had done. What did the Buddha say? The Buddha said, where a person of wise disposition dwells, he should feed restrained and virtuous holy men and dedicate the offering to the devas there. Honored and cherished, they honor and cherish him in return. Then they sympathize with him like a mother with her own child. One who receives the sympathy of devas always sees auspicious things. What he's saying here is that these 2 Brahmins, Sunita and Vasakara, they've invited the Buddha and the Sangha for a house dana, new house dana. At the end of the dana, the Buddha says, a wise man, after he has invited the Sangha and fed them, should then dedicate the offerings to the devas around there, in that house or around that area. Then when the devas are aware of that dedication of merits, they feel honored. They feel that, these people, they're not even related to us, and yet they honor us. And then they also have sympathy for the occupants of the house. Then they, in return, will protect the members of the house, of the household, as well as help them in other ways. There's one story here to illustrate this point. In SBS, we used to go for Pindabat. At one time, our route was different. We went across the forest, across the stream, and across several orchards. And we met one of the orchard owners. One day he told Venerable Kumara that he had some problems in his house. There's a ghost in the house. And that ghost used to create a lot of trouble. It made a lot of funny sounds at night and causing people to be sick and so forth. They tried to do all sorts of things to get rid of this ghost, but they couldn't. So in the end, what he did was he made an altar there and he made offerings to the spirit there. So that ended all the trouble. And on top of that, his wife got a dream and she struck 4 digits. So don't be surprised, you see all these Topek Kong or Dato Kong around. Even as they're Buddhists, if you make offerings to them, they feel that right? They feel honored, so they will help to protect you and to help you in other ways. So although devas might not be able to eat the food that we offer them, just like the Buddha cannot eat the food that you offer him, it's the heart that counts. You show that you have respect and honor, and then that will create a lot of difference. So it's not correct to say that Buddhists should not make offerings to devas. You can still make offerings to devas as long as you understand what you're doing. That you still take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha in the ultimate sense, in the sense that that is the only way. The last thing that one should do with the wealth that is righteously gained is to establish a lofty offering of alms to those samanas and brahmanas, to those monks and brahmins who refrain from vanity and negligence, who are settled in patience and gentleness, who are devoted to taming themselves, to calming themselves, and to attaining nibbana. So the Buddha is telling Anathapindika, after you have done the first three things, now the fourth thing that you should do is to do dana to renunciants. Not only renunciants, because Brahmins are not renunciants, Brahmins are priests. So the Buddha did not say, give only to the Bhikkhu Sangha or to the Bhikkhuni Sangha. He says to Samana Brahmanas. There are non-Buddhist ascetics, non-Buddhist priests who are also well-behaved. In fact, there may be some who are more well-behaved than people dressed in robes and going around bald-headed. They are also worthy of offerings. One should also do dana to them. And it says these offerings, especially if given to spiritual practitioners who refrain from vanity and negligence, who are settled in patience and calmness, who are devoted to taming themselves of the defilements, and to tranquilizing themselves, maybe in meditation, not necessarily Buddhist meditation, but they could also be doing some sort of samatha meditation. They can also be found in other religions. So this sort of offering that is given to such well-behaved, virtuous and spiritually matured people is heavenly, and will result in happiness and conducive to heaven. This is the fourth case of wealth that has gone to good use, that has been fruitfully employed and used for the worthy cause. These, householder, are the four worthy deeds that the noble disciple undertakes with the wealth acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth righteously gained. For anyone whose wealth is expended on other things apart from these four worthy deeds, that wealth is said to have gone to waste, to have been squandered and used frivolously. But for one whose wealth is expended on these four worthy deeds, that wealth is said to have gone to good use, to have been fruitfully employed and used for a worthy cause. I would like to go through with you again what we have done so far. This is the Book of Force. It's called the Pattakama Sutta. The Buddha talks about four wishes that is very universal. Four wishes that are very universal, that everybody wishes for. And he also talks about four things that can lead to the fulfillment of these four wishes. Right? And then after that, he talked about four ways of spending wealth that has been righteously obtained. Right? So the four wishes that are very universal are that you want to have wealth, you want to gain wealth that is righteously obtained, you want to be popular among your relatives and friends, you want to have a long life, and you want to reborn in heaven. The four things that can lead to the fulfillment of these four wishes are to have accomplishment in faith, morality, generosity, and wisdom. Accomplishment in wisdom means the ability to recognize the five hindrances and to abandon them so that you have control over your mind. These five hindrances for a lay person in a lay life are, first one is to be beset or obsessed by unrighteous greed, which means that if you are beset by righteous greed, it's still okay. Second is to be beset by ill will, anything unpleasant in your mind, hatred, disappointment, aversion, ill will. Third is to be beset by sloth and torpor, drowsiness, sleepiness. Fourth is to be beset by restlessness and worry. And the fifth one is to be beset by doubt. If a layperson, you're working, you have to be very clear about your job description, what you're supposed to do, procedure of doing it, then only you can do things efficiently. So, 4 worthy wishes, 4 things that will help you to fulfill these 4 wishes, and 4 things that should be done with the wealth that has been righteously gained. The first one is take care of yourself, your family, your employees, your friends and colleagues. Charity begins at home. The second is to save for a rainy day. And the third is to make the 5 kinds of offerings. And the fourth is to establish dana for renunciants and priests or people who are well-behaved, spiritual aspirants, spiritual practitioners. Now, the 5 types of offerings that should be made are offerings to your relatives, living relatives, to guests when they visit you, to departed relatives, to the king or to the government, and finally to devas. So this is the summary of what I've said. So I hope that I have cleared some misconceptions of what a Buddhist should or should not do. And so if you have any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. His question is, if our departed relatives have been reborn as an animal, then there's no point making offerings to them because they won't be able to receive it. That's a good question, because that was what was asked by Janusoni Brahmana in a sutta called Janusoni Sutta, which I quoted earlier on. That's in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Tenths, Sutta number 177. This Brahmin, Janusoni, he came to the Buddha and he asked the same question. He said, Master Gautama, we Brahmins give dana and do things in full faith, thinking, may this dana reach our departed relatives. May the departed relatives make use of this dana. Master Gautama, can this dana reach our departed relatives? Can the departed relatives make use of the dana? The Buddha replied, Brahmin, when there is an opportunity, it reaches, not when there is none. Then the Brahmin asked, what is opportunity and what is not opportunity? The Buddha answered, if a person did the 10 types of bad conduct, you know the 10 types of bad conduct? Breaking the 5 precepts, okay, that's 5 already. And then the others are slandering people, engaging in frivolous talk, using rough and coarse speech, having wrong view, and having covetousness. These are the 10 types of bad conduct. So a person who did the 10 types of bad conduct is born after death in hell. There he lives on the food of hell beings. This Brahmin is not the opportunity. The dana does not reach him there. So you see here that the Brahmin is talking about dana. He's talking about making offerings, The Brahmins make offerings to the dead, just like we Chinese do during Qingbing. So the dana does not reach the hell being, because in hell you can't eat anything, You eat your karma. That is your food. When your karma expires, you are born somewhere else. Then he said the same thing for a person who did the 10 types of bad conduct, and then he's born after death in the animal kingdom. There he lives on the food of animals. So this Brahmin is also not the opportunity. The dana does not reach him. And the person who did the 10 types of good conduct is the opposite. He observes the 5 precepts. He refrains from slandering people. He refrains from coarse speech, vulgar speech. He refrains from frivolous talk. He doesn't have wrong view. He doesn't have covetousness. So this person, after he dies, he is born in the human world. There he lives on the food of human beings. This Brahmin is also not the opportunity. The dana does not reach him there. He's a human being, and how come it doesn't reach him? You're offering him cakes and rice and sioba and sioge, isn't it? He's a human being, how come he can't eat? Maybe he's in a womb, he's already in a womb, he doesn't know, or if he's already born. People do Qingbing even after 20 years, He may be a man, 20-year-old, adult already, but he doesn't know because he cannot recollect his past life. So he doesn't know either, so he cannot get the dana. A person who did the 10 types of good conduct is born after death in heaven. There he lives on celestial food. This Brahmin is also not the opportunity. The dana does not reach him. So if he's born as a deva also, the deva cannot come and eat the food. This is probably because deva doesn't eat gross food like we do. They have their own very subtle food. The fifth case is a person who did the 10 types of bad conduct, and he is reborn after death in the realm of ghosts. Now the realm of ghosts here is called Peti Visaya. Just now the Brahmin, he asked about his departed relatives. He called them Pubba Peta. This ghost lives on the food of ghosts as well as on what is continually given by his friends, colleagues or blood relations here in the human world. This Brahmin is the opportunity. The dana does reach him there. So only if a departed relative has become a ghost and he is aware that you are doing it for him, then he will get the dana. The Brahmin says, in that case, then it's useless doing the dana, isn't it? He asked the Buddha. And the Buddha says, no, it's not useless. The one who is doing the dana is also creating good karma for himself and is not without benefit. And then he talked about doing dana and not observing the precepts. Earlier on I told you about doing dana, not observing the precepts, and you'll be born as an animal, but you still enjoy all the luxury as the results of good karma you have created before. Or if you did good deeds, then you'll be born in heaven or as a human being, and you can reap the results of your good karma of generosity. About 20 years ago, I met one Burmese man in Rangoon. He is very interested in parapsychology. He went around the whole of Burma looking for kids who could remember their past lives. He wrote a book that's called The House of Existence Again and Again. The house of existence means your body. In his findings, he mentioned that there are some kids who could remember that they were ghosts in their interim period between one human existence and another. They recounted to him what they experienced as ghosts. They said that when they were ghosts, they could see people, although people couldn't see them. And when they were new ghosts, they were quite new to their existence, so they thought that because they still had a body, and they could see their body, but humans can't see their body. Some children can see ghosts. I think many children can see ghosts. It's just that parents, tell them, you're talking nonsense, and then they lose the ability to do that later on. So when children see these ghosts, they take stones and throw at the ghost, and then the ghost starts to run, thinking that the stone is going to hit them. But actually, the stone cannot hit them because they are in another dimension. They are very subtle bodies and they cannot be hurt by so gross physical objects. They were just victims of their own misperception. Probably after some time, when they get used to their new life, they will know that they are invincible from their point of view. But anyway, some of these kids remembered that when they were ghosts, they fed on filthy things like sputum or feces and urine and even food that was offered to them, discarded food they could eat, but they just need 1 grain of rice to be full for the whole day. So it seems that they can eat. Now people also say that when you make offerings to the dead, when you eat the offerings, it's a bit tasteless. Because they say the dead actually, even though they don't eat the whole thing, they suck away the chi. That's what people say. I don't know how true it is. I forgot actually one part just now. After the Buddha had talked about the departed one being born in the realm of ghosts, and then the dana reaches him, then the Brahmin asked, what if the departed relative that we are making offerings to is not born as a ghost? Then the Buddha says, other relatives will be able to make use of that dana. He says, what happens if other relatives are also not born as ghosts. Then the Buddha said, that's impossible. Because the samsara is so long, there's no ghost that is not related to you. So that's why you see all these Mahayana people, that when they do portal, they do portal and make these offerings, all these ghosts will come and eat. I mean, you are related somehow or other, not necessarily in this existence, but many existences ago. So even if you make offerings and the departed one does not eat, then maybe other departed ones who were your relatives before, they could make use of it. They could eat it. You commented on making offerings to the Buddha, right? The Buddha can't eat the food that you're offering to him. But yet people offer that to the Buddha image. As I said, it's the heart that matters, that you make your puja. And showing respect to elders is a virtue that is praised by the Buddha. And that's why in Sigalovada Sutta, it says that one of the responsibilities of a child is to make continual offerings to his departed ones. Okay, I hope that answers your question.